Okay, so in this video we're going to be going over how to use fills in Excel. And this will be mostly review from what we covered in the first video on formatting and giving an overview of all the formatting functionality within Excel because there aren't too many special shortcuts that let us format cells and fill them appropriately in Excel. So most of the time you have to go to Control 1 and then you have to go over to Fill to choose your background color, and pattern style. So there's not too much to say on this topic here. If you did want to make shortcut keys to get to some of this, the best way to do that would be to create your own custom shortcuts within Excel, which we'll get into in later videos, or to create your own macro. And sometimes when you're working at a bank, they actually give you their own macros and they have all their own color schemes, and you just have to adhere to that. So there isn't too much to say on the topic of fills, but we're just going to go over it one more time and just go through another example of how you might use it here. So probably the most common use for fills is when we have data sets like this, or sometimes even with models, when we're entering our assumptions, or we have an area where we enter our different data input. Sometimes we like to fill the background to help it stand out from the rest of the page. And you can see right here, this is actually what we did in the first lesson on formatting. So to do this, we simply press Shift Control right arrow key in the top row, Control 1, then F twice to go to fill. And then this is the one case where, again, actually using the mouse is fine here because it's the easiest way to get to background colors. One other thing I'll point out here that I didn't mention the first time is that we hardly ever use pattern color. We hardly ever use pattern style. So you could potentially change it to one of these patterns with stripes or crosshatches or dots or other patterns like that. But we hardly ever use those. It's a little bit odd to see those in formal documents that are handed over to a client. So most of the time with fills, you stick to just background colors. I won't say that I've never seen patterns used in Excel spreadsheets, but you hardly ever put it in the finished product. So these are not too common to use. And so when you start working at a bank or other financial institution, try to avoid using these unless you've already seen them. Try to just stick to these background colors and keep your choices conservative. Then for fill effects, I'll just go here. We see there are a couple different effects here. We can have a gradient where it fades into one color. And again, to be honest, I've hardly ever seen this actually used too much in the field. Sometimes when you receive data from clients, they'll use it internally in their own data sets, but usually when you're showing this to people, it doesn't look too professional to have this, especially when you have cells that are in a pretty small area. To have a gradient effect like this in so many different cells looks a little bit unprofessional, so you don't really use this one too much. And then for more colors, we can just hit Alt M to get to more colors. And this just lets us enter exact colors if we know exactly what we need. We can just hit Tab a few times. If we go to standard, this is just the standard color picker. Again, this is fine to use the mouse here. That's just the easiest way to get to a color in this case. But once again, as I said, the most common functionality here is just the background color. And you see the pre-selected ones here at the top. If you're using your bank's color scheme, then usually they'll have pre-selected colors for you and you just have to follow those. And then you see these more generic ones here at the bottom. So that's pretty much it for fills. For some practice, we can just change this one at the top and we can make it a slightly different shade of blue now. Press tab a few times. Now that's changed. So we've already been through how to do this in the overview video on formatting. So here the exercise is very simple and very short. All I want you to do is to select this whole area right here and to make it stand out a little bit more because instead of just having a white background, we're going to change the color to something else. So we'll do that. And you can pick anything you want for the color. I'm just going to go with a light beige color right here. Okay. And so I've changed the color now. And actually, this may have looked better when it was all white and you could actually see the grid lines, but nevertheless, this is just for your own practice. Again, not too much new to say on the topic of fills, but just give this a shot. See if you still remember how to use the Control 1 command and then get over to the fills and then select a background color. And make sure you have this whole area selected. Pause the video, and then once you've done that, I'll just walk you through that again, and this time give you all the shortcuts. Okay, good. So let me just undo what I did here. And the way to do this is, as always, we press Shift, Control, down arrow key, and then the right arrow key to select this whole area. Then we press Control 1, and then press F twice to get to the fill area. And then we can go up here and select which color we want. I'm just going to go with this one right here. You may have different choices depending on your setup. And then just press Tab a few times to go to OK. And now this whole area, this background area, is formatted differently, and it helps stand out a little bit more. Again, I think it's actually probably better to have white here, but this is just for your own practice and just to review what we went over before in terms of fills. Coming up next, we'll get into some more advanced material on formatting. We'll go into custom number formats. We'll go into how to clean up data. You can see over here, for example, that the addresses don't look great. So we'll show you how to clean those up and make it look a lot better. And then we'll go into conditional formatting, so how to format cells differently depending on what the contents of the cell is, which comes in handy a lot of times when you're doing models in Excel and even sometimes with data sets. And then finally, we'll finish up with how to print properly, so how to set this up to print properly. And again, this is something that you do very, very frequently as an analyst in investment banking. You're printing documents all the time, and you have to know how to properly print them and display everything on screen. Otherwise, the senior bankers won't be able to read anything that you've done. So it's really important to know how to print everything and how to do that kind of setup. And then once we're done with all that, we'll be getting into formulas and then some of the more advanced topics later on.